Welcome to Nidra Narratives. Settle in, like and subscribe this channel, and leave in comments what content would you like to see. Let the events of the day simply dissolve, like sugar in warm milk, swirling away until there is nothing left but the steady rhythm of your own breath. We are going to travel now, not just across distance, but across time. We are drifting back to a year that hangs heavy in the humidity of history, 1857. Part 1. The Gathering Storm. Imagine, if you will, the world of the mid-19th century. It is a time of iron and steam, of top hats and telegraph wires. While the events we will explore are rooted in the dusty plains of northern India, the tremors of this era were being felt across the entire globe. In the United States, a man named James Buchanan is entering the White House, unaware that his nation is inching toward its own civil fracture. In London, the fog is thick, and Charles Dickens is publishing Little Dorrit in serial installments, writing about debt and prisons, while Queen Victoria sits upon a throne that seems unshakable. It is a world on the brink of modernity, yet still deeply tethered to the old ways. And in India, the air is thick with heat. It is May. The summer sun in the Indian subcontinent is not merely a celestial body, it is a physical weight. It bleaches the sky to a pale, shimmering white. The heat rises from the earth in waving lines, distorting the horizon, making the distant mango groves look like mirages floating on water. In the cantonments, the military quarters where British officers and Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, lived side by side, the dust settles on everything. It settles on the red brick of the bungalows, on the polished brass of the cannons, and on the stiff, heavy uniforms of the men who stand guard. To understand why this tension exists, we must look at the peculiar entity that ruled this land. It was not a king, it was not a government, it was a corporation, the British East India Company. Close your eyes and visualize this for a moment. Imagine a modern tech giant, an Amazon or a Google, suddenly possessing its own army, its own navy, minting its own currency, and collecting taxes from millions of people. This was the Company Bahadur, as it was known locally. It had arrived 2.5 centuries earlier, smelling of salt and spices, seeking pepper, cardamom, and silk. But over decades, through treaties written in flowing Persian script and battles fought in the mud of the monsoon, the trader had become the emperor. By 1857, the company was an anomaly, a strange beast of commerce and conquest. Its reach was vast. From the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas to the tropical backwaters of Kerala, the company's red flag snapped in the wind. But the soul of the land was growing restless. There is a concept in geology called liquefaction, where solid ground, under immense pressure, begins to behave like a liquid. In 1857, the societal ground of India was undergoing liquefaction. The old aristocracies were crumbling. The company, under the Governor-General Lord Dalhousie, had introduced a policy known as the doctrine of lapse. It sounds dry, legalistic, perhaps even boring, but its impact was emotional and devastating. It meant that if an Indian king died without a natural biological heir, his kingdom would not pass to his adopted son, as had been the custom for millennia in Hindu tradition, but would instead lapse or be swallowed up by the company. Imagine the grand palaces of Satara, of Jhansi, of Nagpur. Think of the velvet cushions, the intricate lattice windows, the courtyards where fountains once played. Suddenly, with the stroke of a pen in a ledger in Calcutta, these legacies were erased. Kings became pensioners, queens became tenants in their own homes. The dignity of centuries was being dismantled brick by brick by men who viewed land only as revenue. And it wasn't just the kings. The common soldier, the sepoy, felt the earth moving beneath his feet too. The sepoy was a man of deep pride. He was often a Brahmin or a Rajput from the northern regions of Awadh, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying the honor of his village in the way he held his head. For generations, serving the company had been a respectable profession. It offered a steady salary, a pension, and status. But the wind was changing. The company had begun to expand its wars across the Kala Pani, the Black Water. To the Orthodox Hindu of that time, crossing the ocean was not just a journey, it was a spiritual violation, a loss of caste, a severing of the connection to the ancestors. When the company demanded that soldiers fight in Burma or China, crossing the dark seas, the sepoy felt a cold dread. He was being asked to choose between his livelihood and his soul. Then came the greased cartridge. It is rare in history that a single object becomes the vessel for so much fear and fury. The Enfield P-53 rifle was a marvel of modern engineering, accurate, powerful, lethal. But to load it, a soldier had to bite off the end of a paper cartridge, pour the gunpowder down the barrel, and ram the bullet home. The cartridge was greased to make it slide easily into the rifling. A whisper began to travel through the bazaars. It moved through the marketplaces where grain sellers sat behind mounds of yellow turmeric and red chili. It drifted into the barracks at night, spoken in hushed tones over the embers of cooking fires. The whisper was this: the grease is made of the fat of cows and pigs. To the Hindu sepoy, the cow was sacred, a mother, the embodiment of life. To taste its fat was a sin beyond redemption. To the Muslim sepoy, the pig was unclean, haram, a pollution of the body and spirit. The rumor suggested a dark conspiracy, that the company was not just trying to conquer their land, but to conquer their minds, to strip them of their religion so they could be easily converted to Christianity. Whether the grease was actually cow or pig fat is almost irrelevant to the history of the emotion. The belief that it was true was a spark falling into a room filled with dry gunpowder. Let us zoom in now. Let us float down from the high view of history and stand on the dusty parade ground of Barrackpore, near Calcutta. The date is March 29th, 1857. The air is heavy with the impending afternoon heat. The crows are cawing from the neem trees, and there is a man standing alone in front of the quarter guard. His name is Mangal Pandey. He is not a general, he is not a prince. He is a sepoy of the 34th Bengal Native Infantry. He is 29 years old. History often paints figures as statues, but try to see him as a man. He is pacing, he is agitated. His mind is a whirlwind of the rumors he has heard, the fear of losing his caste, the drugs, perhaps bhang or opium, that were common for calming nerves or dulling pain, and a profound sense of betrayal. He calls out to his fellow soldiers. "Come out! The Europeans are here! Why are you waiting? It is for our religion." The British officers arrive on horseback. The horses' hooves kick up small clouds of dust. Lieutenant Bohr, the adjutant, rides in. Pandey raises his musket. The heavy weapon wavers, then steadies. He fires. He misses the man, but hits the horse. The animal collapses, a tangle of legs and leather. Bohr scrambles up, dusting off his uniform, drawing his pistol. He fires at Pandey and misses. They draw swords. It is a messy, desperate struggle. It is not the choreographed combat of cinema. It is the frantic, sweaty, terrified struggle of men who know that the world they understood is ending. Other sepoys stand and watch, frozen. The Jemadar, the Indian officer in charge of the guard, refuses to arrest Pandey. The spell of authority, the invisible force field that allowed a handful of British merchants to rule millions, flickers and breaks. Mandal Pandey is eventually overpowered. He tries to take his own life with his musket, but fails, only wounding himself. He is arrested, tried, and on April 8th, he hangs. The rope tightens, but the tension does not snap. It only vibrates harder. The British authorities, hoping to stamp out the fire, disband the regiment. They strip the soldiers of their uniforms, their medals, their dignity, and send them walking home. But these men do not just walk home. They walk into legend. They walk into the villages of Awadh and Bihar, carrying with them the story of the cartridge, the story of the martyr Pandey, and the story of a company that has lost its moral compass. The silence that follows the hanging of Mangal Pandey is deceptive. It is the silence of the jungle before the tiger leaps. We must now move our gaze north to the city of Meerut. It is May 10th, 1857, a Sunday. Meerut was one of the largest military stations in India. Broad avenues lined with trees, large bungalows with thatched roofs, churches with spires reaching toward the blinding white sky. The British residents are preparing for evening service. Church bells are tolling, a melancholic, peaceful sound drifting over the cantonment. But in the lines, the sepoys' quarters, there is no peace. 85 soldiers of the 3rd Light Cavalry had been court-martialed the previous day for refusing to touch the cartridges. They had been shackled in iron fetters, their uniforms stripped, and marched off to prison in front of their comrades. They had cried out for help, cried out that they were being punished for their faith. Their comrades had done nothing. They had stood silent. But now, on this Sunday evening, the shame is too much to bear. The women of the bazaar mock the soldiers. Your brothers are in prison, they jeer, and here you are, lounging about, trimming your moustaches. The humiliation acts as the final catalyst. As the sun begins to dip, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and orange, the sepoys break. They rush the armory. They seize their weapons. They ride to the jail and break open the heavy doors. The blacksmiths appear, their hammers ringing out in the twilight, striking the iron fetters off the ankles of the 85 condemned men. The clinking of metal, the shouting of men, the rising smoke of burning bungalows, it all mixes into a cacophony of revolution. The mutiny has begun. But they do not stay in Meerut to fight a siege. They have a destination. They have a symbol. They turn their horses and their feet toward the south, toward the old, crumbling heart of the empire, toward Delhi. Delhi. The very name evokes layers of time. In 1857, it was a city of fading grandeur. The Red Fort, built of sandstone the color of dried blood, stood watch over the Yamuna River. Inside lived Bahadur Shah Zafar. Let us pause to look at him. He is 81 years old. He is the last of the Mughals, the descendant of Tamerlane and Genghis Khan, the heir to the peacock throne. But in 1857, he is a pensioner of the British. He is a poet, a mystic, a man who loves his doves and his gardens more than politics. His power extends only as far as the walls of his fort. The British have already decided that after his death, the title of king will be abolished. His family will be moved out of the palace. He is a twilight king, presiding over a twilight court. Imagine him sitting in his marble pavilion, the Diwani Khas, listening to the flow of the river, writing couplets in Urdu about the fleeting nature of life. He expects to die in peace, a footnote in the history of a changing world. But fate has a different script for Zafar. On the morning of May 11th, the sepoys from Meerut arrive. They cross the bridge of boats over the Yamuna. They gather below the palace windows, clamoring for the king. "We have killed the English in Meerut," they shout. "We have come to fight for the faith. You must lead us." Bahadur Shah Zafar is terrified. He has no army, no treasury, no desire for war. He looks down at the dusty, desperate men and sees only ruin. He sends messengers to the British captain in charge of the city guards, asking for help. But it is too late. The city gates are opened. The rebellion floods into Delhi like the monsoon waters breaching a dam. The relationship between the sepoys and the king is complex. They need his name. They need the legitimacy that only the Mughal throne can provide. To the people of India, Hindu and Muslim alike, the Mughal emperor was still the symbol of sovereignty, the shadow of God on earth. Without him, they are just mutineers. With him, they are an army of liberation. Reluctantly, hesitantly, the old poet accepts his burden. He is proclaimed the Emperor of Hindustan. The flag of the Mughals is raised once more. As night falls over Delhi on May 11th, the city is transformed. The telegraph wires are cut, snapping the British connection to the outside world. The railway lines are torn up. The modern world is being pushed back. But this was not just a military uprising. It was a societal convulsion. Consider the weaver in the countryside, whose livelihood had been destroyed by cheap, machine-made cloth from Manchester. Consider the landlord, the talukdar, who had lost his estates to the company's new tax laws. Consider the religious scholar, who saw the missionaries as a threat to the eternal order. As the news of Delhi spreads, it travels not by telegraph, but by the chapati movement. This is one of the great mysteries of 1857. Months before the violence, village watchmen would bake flatbreads, chapatis, and run them to the next village. From the north to the south, they would say, handing them over. No message was written, no verbal order given, just the bread, moving from hand to hand, village to village, across thousands of miles. Was it a signal, a warning, a prayer? Historians still debate it, but in the hypnotic rhythm of this narrative, let us see it as the heartbeat of the land, quickening. A silent communication that something vast was coming. The stage is now set. The actors have taken their places. The old king and his fort, the sepoys with their greased cartridges, the British officers, stunned and scattered, realizing that the floorboards of their empire have rotted away. The storm has gathered. The first drops have fallen. But the deluge, the sieges, the heroism, the tragedy, and the terrible vengeance is yet to come. As we pause here, let the image of the Red Fort linger in your mind. See it glowing soft and warm in the early morning light of 1857, unaware of the blood that will soon stain its stones. Part 2. The fire spreads. Let the dust of Delhi settle for a moment. Find that place of stillness again. If your mind has wandered to the tasks of tomorrow, gently guide it back. Visualize a map of India unfurling in the dark, a vast, diamond-shaped tapestry of rivers, forests, and plains. We are watching the ink spread. We are watching the heat rise. In part 1, we stood on the banks of the Yamuna as the sun rose over the Red Fort. Now, we must travel deeper into the heartland. It is June 1857. The Loo, the hot, dry wind of the North Indian summer, is blowing. It is a wind that feels like the breath of a furnace. It strips the moisture from the leaves and cracks the earth. In this heat, news travels faster than the wind itself. The telegraph lines have been cut in many places, the copper wires hanging limp like broken vines. But the story of Delhi, the story that the Mughal emperor has been restored, flies on the wings of rumours. It travels through the runners, the dak carriers, who jog miles with bells on their staffs to scare away snakes. It travels through the wandering ascetics, the sadhus and fakirs, who move invisibly between kingdoms. The fire leaps from city to city. It jumps the rivers. It crosses the ravines. We arrive now at Kanpur, known to the British then as Cawnpore. Kanpur was a bustling garrison town on the southern bank of the Ganges. It was prosperous, dusty, and deceptively calm. Here, the drama centers around a man named Nana Saheb. Picture him. He is 33 years old. He is a Maratha aristocrat, living in a lavish palace at Bithor, a few miles upstream. He is the adopted son of the last Peshwa, Baji Rao II, the former Prime Minister of the Maratha Empire. For decades, his father had lived in exile, sustained by a massive pension from the company. But when the old Peshwa died, the company's accountants in Calcutta closed their ledgers. They declared that the pension was a personal grant, valid only for Baji Rao's lifetime, not for his heirs. They refused to send the money. Worse, they refused to recognize Nana Sahib's title. They told this proud nobleman that he was, essentially, a commoner. To Nana Sahib, this was not just a loss of revenue, it was a theft of his identity. For years, he sent emissaries to London, hiring expensive lawyers to argue his case. He believed in British justice. He believed that if the Queen only knew, she would intervene. He was wrong. The petitions were rejected. So, in June 1857, when the sepoys in Kanpur rebel, they find a man who has nothing left to lose but his anger. They surround his palace. "Maharaj," they say, "a kingdom awaits you." The man who had been rejected by the empire becomes the leader of the revolt against it. The British community in Kanpur, about 1,000 people, including women, children and civilians, retreat into a makeshift fortification. It is not a castle, it is not a fortress. It is merely 2 single-story barracks surrounded by a shallow trench and a low mud wall. It stands in the middle of a flat, open plain. The siege of the Kanpur entrenchment is one of the most harrowing episodes of human endurance in history. Imagine the heat. It is 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 48 degrees Celsius in the shade. But there is no shade. The barracks have tin roofs that radiate heat like ovens. Inside, there is little water. There is a single well, but it is exposed to sniper fire. Every cup of water drawn is a risk of life. For 3 weeks they hold out. The world outside is a cacophony of musketry and cavalry charges. Inside it is a silent battle against thirst, heatstroke and despair. The Victorian dresses of the women, heavy with petticoats and corsets, become instruments of torture in the Indian summer. The stiff uniforms of the officers are stained with sweat and dust. Yet amidst this, life continues with a strange, surreal stubbornness. A soldier reads a crumbled letter from home. A child plays with a doll made of rags. They wait for relief that does not come. Finally, a truce is called, a promise of safe passage. Nana Sahib offers boats to take the besieged down the Ganges to Allahabad. On the morning of June 27th, the survivors march out. They are gaunt, spectral figures. They make their way to the Sati Chara Ghat, a landing place on the river. Wooden boats with thatched roofs are waiting, bobbing gently in the water. What happens next is a tragedy shrouded in the fog of war. As the boats push off, a shot rings out. Confusion erupts. The thatch on the boats catches fire. The river, usually a source of life, becomes a scene of sorrow. The escape is thwarted. We will not dwell on the violence here. The history books record the grim details. But for our journey, let us focus on the silence that follows. The emptiness of the riverbank. The drift of smoke over the water. It is the moment when trust between 2 peoples is shattered completely. Shards of glass that will not be put back together for 90 years. While Kanpur burns, another drama is unfolding just 50 miles away, in the city of Lucknow. Lucknow is the jewel of Awadh. It is a city of poets, of courtesans, of exquisite gardens and gilded domes. It is a city where the Urdu language was polished until it shone like a diamond. Here, the British presence was centred in the Residency, a sprawling complex of 33 acres containing houses, banquet halls, and a church. The man in charge is Sir Henry Lawrence. He is a gaunt, bearded man with deep-set, melancholy eyes. Unlike many of his peers, he loves India. He respects the sepoys. He foresaw the storm years before it broke. "We have not been honest," he once wrote. "We have been arrogant." When the rebellion reaches Lucknow, Lawrence gathers everyone, Europeans, loyal Indian soldiers, and civilians, into the Residency. He fortifies it. He stocks it with grain and ammunition. The siege of the Lucknow Residency begins on July 1st, 1857. It will last for nearly 5 months. Close your eyes and try to imagine the soundscape of this siege. It is not a battle of open fields. It is a battle of intimacy. The besiegers are so close, sometimes just across a narrow street, that the British can hear them talking, can smell their cooking fires. The Residency becomes a world unto itself, a claustrophobic island in a sea of rebellion. The buildings are pummeled by cannonballs until they look like Swiss cheese. The beautifully manicured lawns are dug up for trenches. The grand banqueting hall becomes a hospital. Life here is lived underground, in the takanas or basements, to escape the bombardment. It is a troglodyte existence. People sleep on tables, on floors, surrounded by rats and flies. Yet, human resilience shines through. A soldier writes a diary on the back of envelopes. A woman gives birth in a cellar, while mortar shells explode overhead. Sir Henry Lawrence, the visionary, is killed early in the siege by a shell that bursts in his bedroom. His dying words are famously humble. Here lies Henry Lawrence, who tried to do his duty. He is buried in a common grave with other soldiers, wrapped only in a blanket. The siege grinds on. July turns to August. The monsoon arrives. The rain changes everything. The dust turns to mud. The trenches fill with water. The heat breaks, but the humidity rises, bringing sickness. Cholera and dysentery stalk the corridors of the Residency. But outside the walls of the Residency, the rebellion is not a monolith. It is a complex tapestry of motivations. There are the talukdars, the powerful barons of the countryside, who have brought their peasant armies to surround the city. They are fighting to regain their ancestral lands. There are the Malvis, religious leaders, preaching a holy war. There are the sepoys, fighting for their caste and their pay. And there is Begum Hazrat Mahal. Let us shine a light on her. She is one of the most compelling figures of 1857. She was one of the wives of the deposed king of Awadh, Wajid Ali Shah. When the British annexed the kingdom and exiled the king to Calcutta, she stayed behind. She is not a warrior by training, but she has the heart of a lioness. She rallies the rebel forces. She rides an elephant into battle. She mocks the men for their cowardice when they falter. She governs the city in the name of her young son, Burgess Kader. In a time when women were expected to be invisible behind the veil, she is the visible soul of the resistance in Lucknow. While the Residency holds on by a thread, the British are scrambling to organize a relief force. But India is vast. Moving an army from Calcutta to Lucknow in the middle of the monsoon is a logistical nightmare. The rivers are swollen, the roads are washed out. The ox carts get stuck in the deep mud. General Henry Havelock leads the first relief column. He is a stern, pious Baptist who reads the Bible to his troops every morning. His soldiers are a mix of British infantry and Sikhs from the Punjab, men who have no love for the Hindustani sepoys and have sided with the British. They fight their way up the Grand Trunk Road, battle after battle, marching in the wet, sleeping in the wet. They are decimated by disease. By the time they reach Lucknow in late September, they are too few to break the siege. They manage to fight their way into the Residency, but they cannot get the people out. So, the siege simply expands. The rescuers become the besieged. The overcrowding gets worse. The food rations are cut again. They grind their own grain. They shoot the bullocks for meat. They wait. And while they wait, the world watches. In London, the newspapers are full of the Indian Mutiny. It is the first war to be covered by the new technology of photography. Felice Beato, a war photographer, will soon arrive to capture the skeletal ruins of the Residency. But for now, it is sketched by artists and described in letters that take weeks to arrive. The British public is horrified, then enraged. The stories of Kanpur have reached them. The Victorian desire for order clashes with the chaos of the news. They demand vengeance. They demand a restoration of the Pax Britannica. But in the villages of India, the mood is different. There is a sense of suspended time. The company Raj has vanished from vast swathes of the north. For a few months, the old world has returned. The villagers stop paying taxes. The police stations are empty. The jungle begins to reclaim the roads. It is a strange, breathless interlude. The empire has been struck a blow that has sent it reeling. The question hanging in the air, heavy as the monsoon clouds, is, can it recover? As we leave Lucknow for now, trapped in its ring of fire, visualize the residency as it stands today, a ruin of red brick, preserved exactly as it was left, the cannonball marks still pockmarking the walls. It is a silent monument to a time when the world held its breath. The fire has spread, the north is ablaze. But in the central hills, a new figure is about to emerge. A woman who will become the very icon of bravery. The chessboard is set for the final, desperate phase of the game. Part 3. The Warrior Queen. We are leaving the damp, river-fed plains of the north now. We are moving south and west into a land of granite and grit. The landscape changes. The lush mango groves give way to scrub forests of thorny acacia. The flat horizon crinkles into rocky hills that look like the spine of a sleeping dragon. The air here is drier, sharper. This is Bundelkhand, a land where water is precious and honor is more precious still. In the center of this rugged terrain stands a fortress on a hill. Its walls are thick, sloping, and formidable. This is Jhansi. If you were to stand on the ramparts of Jhansi in early 1858, you would see a city holding its breath. And at the heart of this city, there is a woman who has become a legend, a myth, a goddess in human form. Her name is Lakshmibai, but to history, she is simply the Rani, the Queen. Let us strip away the posters and the statues for a moment and see her as she was. She was born Manikarnika, a girl from a Brahmin family in Varanasi, the holy city of death and rebirth. She grew up not just learning to read scriptures, but learning to ride horses, to wield a sword, to shoot a musket. She was a tomboy in a world that preferred its women behind veils. She married the Maharaja of Jhansi, Gangadhar Rao. It was a good match, but tragedy stalked her. Her firstborn son died at 4 months. Then her husband fell ill. On his deathbed, they adopted a son, Damodar Rao, to carry on the lineage. It was a sacred rite, witnessed by British officers. But Lord Dalhousie, the Governor-General we met earlier, refused to recognize the boy. He applied the doctrine of lapse. He annexed Jhansi. He ordered the Rani to leave the fort and live in a town palace on a pension of 60,000 rupees a year. It was in this moment of humiliation that the steel in her spine revealed itself. When the British agent told her the news, she did not weep. She did not beg. She stood behind a curtain, her voice ringing out clear and defiant. Main apni Jhansi nahi dungi. I will not give up my Jhansi. For a few years, she lived quietly, governing her small court, observing religious fasts, and raising her adopted son. But when the mutiny erupted in 1857, the British officials in Jhansi were killed by mutinous sepoys. The British fled. Chaos reigned. In the vacuum of power, the Rani stepped forward. Not as a rebel initially, but as a ruler protecting her people from bandits and rival chieftains. She raised an army, she cast cannons, she strengthened the walls. For 10 months, while the rest of northern India burned, Jhansi was an island of efficient, independent rule. Sir Hugh rose. He is the antagonist in this drama, but a worthy one. He is a career soldier, a veteran of the Crimean War, a man who believes in discipline above all else. He is given command of the Central India Field Force. His mission is simple: march south to north, crush every pocket of resistance, and link up with the armies fighting in the north. He is a machine of war. He marches his men through the heat of the day, ignoring the sun that kills them by the dozen. He defeats rebel armies vastly larger than his own through sheer tactical brilliance and the terrifying power of his artillery. In March 1858, he arrives at the gates of Jhansi. The siege of Jhansi is an epic of endurance. The British batteries open fire, the walls shudder. For days and nights, the sky is lit up by the arcs of mortar shells. Inside the fort, the Rani is everywhere. She is dressed not in silks, but in a tunic and trousers, a silk turban on her head. She inspects the defences. She rallies the gunners. And here is a detail often missed. The women of Jhansi fight alongside the men. They carry ammunition. They repair the walls under fire. They tend to the wounded. The entire city becomes a single organism, fighting for its life. The British bombardment is relentless. They breach the walls. On April 3rd, they storm the city. The fighting in the streets is ferocious. It is hand to hand, house to house. The Rani withdraws to the citadel, the highest point of the fort. She watches her city burn. She knows the end is near. Her advisors tell her to surrender. She looks at them, her eyes flashing, and refuses. "I will die a free woman," she says. On the night of April 4th, under the cover of darkness, she ties her 12-year-old son, Damodar Rao, to her back with a silk sash. She mounts her favourite horse, a white charger named Badal. The gates open silently. She spurs the horse. They gallop out into the night. Legend says she jumped her horse from the ramparts, a 40-foot drop. Whether she jumped or simply rode out through the picket lines, the feat is miraculous. She cuts her way through the British Guards. She rides all night, covering nearly 40 miles, outrunning the pursuit, arriving at the rebel camp at Kalpi. She has lost her home. She has lost her army, but she has not lost her spirit. While the Rani is fighting for her life in the Rocky Hills, we must pan the camera back to the north, to Delhi, to see how the great wheel of history has turned. By late 1857, the British had regrouped. They had brought in reinforcements, Sikhs from the Punjab, Gurkhas from Nepal, and fresh regiments from England. They laid siege to Delhi. The city that had celebrated the return of the Mughal emperor in May was a graveyard by September. The British stormed the Kashmiri Gate. They fought their way to the Red Fort. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the poet king, fled to Humayun's tomb, a magnificent garden tomb of his ancestor. There, huddled in the shadows of the great sandstone dome, he waited. Captain William Hodson, a British intelligence officer, found him there. Zafar surrendered. He was promised his life, but nothing more. The tragedy of the Mughals is finalized here. Hodson arrests the king. The next day, he arrests the king's sons and grandson. Near the Delhi gate, in a moment of cold-blooded calculation, Hodson orders the princes to strip naked. He shoots them dead at point-blank range. The Shadow of God is now a prisoner. He is put on trial in his own palace. He is found guilty of rebellion, and then he is exiled. Imagine the heartbreak. An 82-year-old man forced to leave the city his family had built, the city he loved more than life. He is put on a bullock cart and sent to Rangoon in Burma. He would die there in a garage, writing poems on the walls with charcoal because he was denied pen and paper. कितना है बदनसीब ज़फ़र दफ़न के लिए / 2 गज़ ज़मीन भी न मिली कुएं यार में. How unfortunate is Zafar for his burial / he could not even get 2 yards of land in the street of his beloved. Back in central India, the Rani of Jhansi knows nothing of Zafar's poetry. She knows only war. She joins forces with Tatya Topi, a brilliant guerrilla general who was the right-hand man of Nana Sahib. Together, they perform one last desperate maneuver. They capture the fortress city of Gwalior from a pro-British Maharaja. It is June 1858. The heat is now apocalyptic. The rocks of Gwalior are too hot to touch. Sir Hugh Rose, exhausted but relentless, catches up with them. The final battle takes place on the plains outside Gwalior, at a place called Kota Ki Sarai. The Rani dresses in a soldier's uniform, a red jacket, pearl necklace, and a turban. She commands the rebel cavalry. She charges into the fray. The British hussars, the elite cavalry, countercharge. In the melee she is struck. A carbine shot? A saber cut? The accounts vary. She falls from her horse. Her faithful servants carry her to a mango grove near the river. She is bleeding. Her breath is shallow. She tells her followers to burn her body quickly, so the British cannot touch her. As the flames of her funeral pyre rise into the shimmering heat of the afternoon, the soul of the rebellion rises with them. So Hugh Rose, upon hearing of her death, would later write, "She was the bravest and the best of the military leaders of the rebel. With her death, the heart goes out of the uprising in central India. The devil's wind, the British retribution, sweeps across the land. It is a time of hangings, of villages burned, of a vengeance so terrible that it silenced the country for generations." But the silence was different this time. It was not the silence of submission. It was the silence of a seed planted deep in the earth, waiting for the rain. Part 4. The Hidden Flames. We have walked the high walls of forts and the manicured lawns of the Residency. But the spirit of 1857 was not confined to palaces and garrisons. It flowed like water into the cracks of the earth, into the dance halls, the feudal estates of the East, and the deep, tiger-haunted jungles of central India. To truly understand the scale of this moment, we must leave the well-trodden path. We must travel east to the fertile, flood-prone plains of Bihar. Here, the air is thick with humidity. The rice paddies stretch to the horizon, a quilt of emerald green reflecting the monsoon sky. And here, we meet a man who defies every expectation of what a warrior should look like. His name is Kunwar Singh. In the history books, he is often a footnote, but in the folklore of Bihar, he is a giant. Picture him. He is not a young, hot-blooded sepoy. He is 80 years old. His beard is white as snow, flowing down his chest. His face is a map of wrinkles, etched by 8 decades of sun and wind. He is the zamindar, the landlord of Jagdishpur. He has lived a full life. He should be sitting on his veranda, watching the river flow, bouncing his great-grandchildren on his knee. But when the sepoys in the nearby town of Danapur revolt, they come to him. They do not see an old man. They see a leader. Kunwar Singh does not hesitate. At an age when most men are preparing for death, he prepares for war. Imagine the sight of him mounting his warhorse. His back is straight. His eyes, clouded with age, still hold a spark of fierce intelligence. He gathers a ragtag army, peasants with bamboo staves, old retainers with rusty swords, and mutinous sepoys. He leads them not into a suicidal charge, but into a masterclass of guerrilla warfare. He knows the land. He knows every ravine, every grove of mango trees, every bend in the Ganges River. He plays a game of cat and mouse with the British forces, who are young enough to be his grandson. There is a legendary moment that captures the soul of this old lion. He is crossing the Ganges River, retreating from a battle. The British are firing from the banks. A cannonball, or perhaps a musket shot, shatters his left wrist. In the middle of the river, with the water swirling around his horse's legs, Kunwar Singh looks at his mangled hand. He realizes it is useless, it is a burden. He draws his sword with his right hand. With a single, fluid motion of devotion and defiance, he severs his own hand. He throws it into the water. "Hey, Ganga Maya," he whispers to the holy river. "Accept this last offering from your son." He rides on. He survives the crossing. He returns to his estate at Jagdishpur and, incredibly, defeats the British force sent to capture him. He dies in his own bed, a free man, the Union Jack never having flown over his home while he breathed. Let the image of that old man offering his hand to the river float in your mind. It speaks of a connection to the land that goes deeper than politics. It is a bond of blood and water. Now, let the scene dissolve. The green fields of Bihar fade into the twilight of a bustling city. We are back in Kanpur, before the fires, before the tragedy we spoke of earlier. We are entering a kotha, a salon of a courtesan. The air here is perfumed with rosewater and hookahs. The sound is the delicate chiming of gungrus, ankle bells, and the intricate rhythm of the tabla. This is the world of Azizun Bai. Azizun Bai is a wife. To the Victorian British, she is a fallen woman. But in Indian society of the 19th century, the wife was a figure of culture, a keeper of the arts, often wealthier and more educated than the wives of noblemen. Azizun Bai is young, beautiful, and fiercely independent. She is the favorite of the sepoys. They come to her salon not just for music, but to talk. And as the whispers of rebellion begin to circulate, her salon becomes a secret headquarters. When the uprising begins, Azizun Bai does not hide. She trades her silks for a soldier's uniform. She trades her ankle bells for a brace of pistols. She forms a brigade of women, the Lal Kurti, or red shirts. These are not soldiers in the traditional sense. They are spies. They are messengers. They move through the bazaars and the cantonments, invisible to the British eye, carrying information that brings the empire to its knees. Imagine her riding through the smoke-filled streets of Kanpur on horseback, her hair tucked under a turban, rallying the men. If you cannot fight, she tells a group of hesitant soldiers, then give me your muskets and go wear bangles. She is the fire that burns in the heart of the city. She represents the women whose names were never recorded in the official dispatches, but who fought with a ferocity that surprised everyone. We leave the city now. We move to the final landscape of this story, the deep, tangled jungles of central India. Tatya Tope. He is the ghost of the rebellion. He was the general who served Nana Saheb and later fought alongside the Rani. Now he is alone. He has no kingdom, no treasury, no fixed army. He has only his wits and the wilderness. For 9 months, Tatya Tope leads the British army on a chase across thousands of miles of the most difficult terrain in India. He moves through the ravines of the Chambal, where bandits hide. He crosses the Narmada River, the psychological border of the south. He moves like the wind. He strikes a supply column and vanishes before the dust settles. He sleeps in caves. He eats what the forest provides. The British generals are driven to distraction. They call him the slippery eel. They cannot catch him. But Tatya Tope is fighting a new enemy now: time. The rebellion is fading. The villagers are tired of war. The local kings, seeing the way the wind is blowing, are turning back to the British. The tragedy of Tatya Tope is not that he was defeated in battle, but that he was betrayed by a friend. A local chieftain, Man Singh, wanting to curry favour with the British, leads them to Tatya's hiding place in the jungle. They find him asleep. He is captured, tried, and executed. But look at his demeanour in the final moments. He stands calm, dignified. He admits to nothing but his duty to his master. He asks for no mercy. With his death, the last ember of the military resistance is stomped out. The jungle goes quiet. The tigers return to their prowling, indifferent to the history that has just played out beneath the canopy. These 3 stories, the old landlord in Bihar, the dancing girl in Kanpur, and the ghost general in the jungle, remind us that 1857 was not a monolith. It was a kaleidoscope. It was a war fought by the old and the young, the highborn and the outcast, the city dweller and the forest wanderer. As we prepare to move to the aftermath, let us hold these 3 figures in our minds. They are the hidden flames, the ones who burned bright in the corners of history, illuminating the depth of the human desire to be free. The fire is out now, the smoke is clearing, the stage is empty. But before we see what grows from the ashes, take a moment to just breathe. Feel the coolness of the river where Kunwar Singh offered his hand. Hear the fading echo of Azizanbai's ankle bells. Smell the dry leaves of the jungle where Tatya slept. Part 5. The Poet and the Protector. Focus. Mirza Ghalib, the ayahs and the complexity of survival. Let the drums of war fade. Let the smoke of the cannons drift away on the breeze. The world is quiet now. We are no longer on the dusty plains of battle. We are entering the narrow, shadowed lanes of Old Delhi, Shah Jahanabad. It is the winter of 1857. The city has fallen. The British have retaken it, but the victory is a hollow, ghostly thing. In a small house in the neighbourhood of Ballamaran, a man sits by a window. He is wrapped in a wool shawl against the chill. He is 60 years old. He has a white beard and eyes that have seen too much. This is Mirza Asadullah Khan, known to the world simply as Ghalib. If you know Urdu poetry, you know his name. He is the Shakespeare of the Mughal court. He is a man of wit, of irony, of profound melancholy. Throughout the siege, while cannons roared and soldiers looted, Ghalib did not fight with a sword. He fought with his pen. He kept a diary, the Dastambu, recording the death of his world. Imagine sitting in the room with him. The inkwell is dry, the paper is brittle. The street outside, once bustling with the sounds of merchants selling pigeons and kites, is silent. Ghalib writes a letter to a friend. Listen to the sorrow in his voice. A sorrow so deep it feels like a physical weight on the chest. Here in this city, he writes, the thousands of lamps that once lit up the night have been extinguished. The gardens where we recited poetry are now graveyards. I am a stranger in my own home. He tells a story of the cultural erasure that is far more painful than the physical destruction. The British, in their retribution, looted the royal library. Thousands of priceless manuscripts, books of philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and poetry, written in flowing calligraphy and illuminated with gold leaf, were taken. They were either burned for warmth by shivering soldiers, or sold for pennies to wrap spices in the bazaar. Ghalib watches this. He sees the knowledge of centuries turning into smoke. He sees the karkhanas, the workshops of the artisans, who made the intricate Zardozi embroidery and the delicate ivory carvings, boarded up. He is destitute. His pension has stopped. He has sold his clothes for food. Yet, in this absolute darkness, he produces some of his most haunting verses. Dil nadan tujhe hua kya hai? Akhir is dard ki dawa kya hai? O naive heart, what has happened to you? After all, what is the cure for this pain? He becomes the memory keeper. While the politicians are busy drawing new maps, Ghalib is preserving the soul of a civilization in amber. He reminds us that when empires clash, it is beauty that bleeds first. Let us leave the melancholic poet now, gazing out at the ruins of the Red Fort. We must shift our gaze to a different kind of heroism, a heroism of silence and touch. We travel to the chaotic days of the initial outbreak in May and June. In the bungalows of the British cantonments, there was a figure who was neither British nor quite Indian in the political sense. She was the ayah. The ayah was the Indian nanny. She was the woman who rocked the British babies to sleep, who sang them lullabies in Hindi, who fed them warm milk, who cooled their foreheads when the fever struck. She was the surrogate mother to the children of the empire. When the violence erupted, many British families were separated. Mothers were killed, fathers were fighting. The children were left alone in the terror. History records the generals. It rarely records the ayahs. But there are dozens of fragmentary stories, whispers in family journals, of these women. Picture an ayah named Lakshmi, a composite of many real women. The bungalow is burning. The rioters are at the gate. She does not run to save herself. She does not run to her own family in the village. She picks up the white child, the Baba, and wraps him in a rough, homespun shawl. She darkens his face with soot or berry juice to hide his pale skin. She slips out the back door into the terrified night. She walks for miles. Her feet are blistered. She carries a child who belongs to the race that is oppressing her people, yet she sees only a child. She takes him to her own village. She hides him in her own hut, under a charpoy, a woven bed. When the mutineers come asking if there are any Farangis, foreigners, hiding, she lies. She risks her life, her family's life, and her caste to protect this small, confused life. Why? It is a question that defies politics. It is the fierce, irrational, beautiful instinct of love. For weeks, she feeds him from her own meager rations. She sings the same lullabies she sang in the nursery, creating a bubble of safety in a world of fire. There is a documented story of an ayah who walked hundreds of miles to bring a child to the safety of a British garrison, only to be turned away at the gates by suspicious guards. She sat outside the walls for days, refusing to leave until the child was safe. These women did not get medals. They did not get statues. Most of them were dismissed when the parents were found or sent back to England. But in the grand tapestry of 1857, they represent the thread of humanity that refused to snap. As we hold these two images in our minds, the old poet mourning his books, and the ayah protecting a child not her own, we see the true complexity of history. It is not black and white. It is not just us versus them. It is a grey twilight where kindness and cruelty dance together. The war is a loud thing, but survival is a quiet thing. It is the scratch of a pen on paper. It is the hushed song in a dark hut. As we prepare to move to the final chapter of our saga, let the peace of that realization settle over you. The guns are silent. The shouting is over. All that remains is the poetry and the protection. You are safe. The history is flowing around you, but you are the rock in the river, unmoved, calm. Part 6. The Ashes and the Phoenix. What remains when the noise stops? Silence. But it is not an empty silence. It is a pregnant silence. The kind of silence that hangs over a forest after a wildfire, where the soil is black and scorched, yet deep underneath, the roots are already drinking the rain. We are now in the year 1858. The Great Rebellion is technically over. The British have reconquered the land mile by bloody mile. But they have realized a terrifying truth. They can no longer rule India as a business. The East India Company, with its ledgers and its shareholders, has been exposed as woefully inadequate to govern a continent of deeper passions and ancient gods. It is November 1st, 1858. We travel to the city of Allahabad, where the muddy waters of the Ganges meet the blue currents of the Yamuna. A grand stage has been erected. It is draped in the Union Jack. Lord Canning, the Governor-General, stands before a sea of people. There are the surviving British officers, their red coats faded by the sun. There are the Indian princes, the Maharajas and Nawabs who stayed loyal, glittering in jewels that seemed too bright for such a somber day. And far behind them, the common people watch, the farmers, the weavers, the survivors. Canning reads from a parchment that will change history. It is the Queen's proclamation. Listen to the shift in tone. For a century, the language of the British in India had been the language of commerce, profit, loss, revenue, annexation. Now, it becomes the language of queenship. We hold ourselves bound to the natives of our Indian territories by the same obligations of duty which bind us to all our other subjects. With these words, the East India Company is dissolved. The corporate boardrooms of London are replaced by the Parliament. India is now the jewel in the crown. Queen Victoria promises religious tolerance. She promises that the British will no longer interfere with ancient customs. She promises that no more land will be seized from the princes. It is a peace offering. It is a Magna Carta for the Indian people. But words on paper are one thing. The reality on the ground is another. While the proclamation speaks of equality, the architecture speaks of separation. If you were to walk through an Indian city in 1860, be it Allahabad, Lucknow, or Lahore, you would see a new city rising next to the old one. The old city remains a labyrinth of narrow lanes, bazaars, and temples, teeming with life and noise. But the British retreat from it. They are haunted by the memories of the mutiny. They fear the closeness of the people they rule. So they build the civil lines and the cantonments. Imagine these new spaces. Wide, straight boulevards lined with neems and banyans. Large, whitewashed bungalows set far back from the road, hidden behind high hedges. The club, the gymkhana, becomes the centre of social life. Here, whiskey and soda are served, cricket is played, and a sign often hangs at the gate. Dogs and Indians not allowed. A psychological apartheid sets in. The fluidity of the 18th century, where British officers wore Indian clothes and married Indian women, is gone forever. The Sahib becomes a distant, godlike figure, dispensing justice from a high horse, but never touching the hand of the man he rules. The trust is broken. But while the people are separated, the land is being stitched together with iron. We cannot tell the story of the post-1857 world without hearing the scream of the steam whistle. The British realized that the rebellion had almost succeeded because they couldn't move troops fast enough. So, they embark on the greatest engineering project the world had ever seen: the Indian Railways. Close your eyes and listen. Chuk-chuk, chuk-chuk, woo-woo. It is the sound of the future. Thousands of labourers are cutting through the rocky ghats of Maharashtra. They are spanning the flood-prone rivers of Bengal with bridges of steel. The locomotive, a black iron beast belching coal smoke, begins to snake its way across the subcontinent. It was built for control. It was built to move armies and extract cotton. But history has a sense of irony. The train does not care about caste. In the third-class carriage, a Brahmin must sit next to a Dalit. A Tamil must sit next to a Punjabi. As the landscape rolls by outside the window, the changing colours of the earth, the shifting styles of turbans, the passengers begin to realise something profound. They are not just residents of a village or a kingdom. They are residents of a single, vast entity called India. The railway, designed to secure the empire, becomes the very nervous system that will eventually coordinate the freedom struggle. And while the train connects the bodies, something else is connecting the minds. We must travel now to the humid classrooms of Calcutta. While the North was burning in 1857, the intelligentsia of Bengal was reading. The University of Calcutta was established that very same year. Meet the Bhadralok, the gentlefolk. These are young Indian men, sons of landlords and clerks, who are diving deep into Western education. They read Shakespeare, yes, but they also read John Stuart Mill. They read about the French Revolution. They read about liberty, equality, fraternity. They look at the Queen's proclamation and they take it seriously. You promised us equal treatment, they say in perfect English. So, where is it? They are not fighting with muskets. They are fighting with petitions, with newspapers, with the law. They are the first generation of modern Indian nationalists. Men like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who would write Vande Mataram, the hymn to the motherland. They are the bridge between the old feudal anger of Nana Sahib and the modern democratic demand of the future. They are the phoenix rising from the ashes. The British look at these educated men with a mix of pride and unease. They wanted to create a class of interpreters, Indian in blood and colour, but English in taste and intellect. They succeeded, but they did not expect that this very class would eventually ask them to leave. As the sun sets on the 1860s, the landscape of India has changed. The Mughal emperor is dead in Rangoon. The Rani of Jhansi is a legend sung in the hills. The East India Company is a memory. The train whistle echoes across the plains. And in the gaslit study rooms of Calcutta and Bombay, young men are dipping their pens in ink, preparing to write the next chapter of this epic. The storm of 1857 cleared the air. It destroyed the old structures, but it laid the foundation for something new. It was the painful, bloody birth of a nation. As we prepare for our final moments together, let this image rest with you. A train crossing a bridge over the Ganges at sunset. The ancient river flows below, timeless and sacred. The iron engine chugs above, relentless and modern. This is the India that is emerging, a land of collisions, a land of contradictions, a land waking up from a long, fevered dream. Part 7. Echoes in Eternity. Imagine you are standing in a garden in Delhi today. It is early morning. The city is waking up. The distant honk of cars, the call of a vegetable seller. But here, among the old stones, it is quiet. The dew is fresh on the grass. You are looking at a crumbling wall of red sandstone. It is pockmarked with small holes. These are the bullet marks from 1857. History is not just in books. It is written on the earth itself. It is in the DNA of the people. It is a ghost that walks beside us. As we conclude our epic, we must ask, what did it all mean? The events of 1857 were a tragedy, yes. A tragedy of misunderstanding, of arrogance, of fear. But they were also a crucible. In that fierce fire, the modern idea of India was forged. Before 1857, people fought for their kings, their castes, their regions. The Bengali fought for Bengal, the Maratha for the Peshwa, the Sikh for the Khalsa. But in 1857, for the first time, a different cry was heard. A cry of Hindustan. A realization that the fate of the peasant in Awadh was tied to the fate of the emperor in Delhi. It was a messy, imperfect unity, but it was the seed. Fast forward 90 years to 1947. Subhash Chandra Bose, the fiery leader of the Indian National Army, stands before his troops in Singapore. They are fighting to free India from British rule. He gives them a slogan, "Chalo Dilli," onward to Delhi. It is the exact same cry the sepoys used when they marched from Meerut in May 1857. The memory of the mutiny had become the fuel for the freedom struggle. The Rani of Jhansi had become a folk hero, her story sung in every village square to inspire courage. The failed rebellion of the grandfathers became the successful revolution of the grandsons. But the legacy is not just political, it is human. Think of the British cemeteries scattered across northern India. In the residency at Lucknow, the graves are still there. Here lies a child, here lies a soldier. They are tended with care today by Indian gardeners. The bitterness has faded, leaving only a melancholy respect for the sheer endurance of the human spirit. And think of the descendants of the Mughals. They live among us today, some in Kolkata, some in Hyderabad, carrying the blood of emperors in their veins, living ordinary lives as teachers, writers, or shopkeepers. The empire is gone, but the lineage survives. This is the lesson of 1857. Permanence is an illusion. The East India Company believed it would rule forever. It is gone. The Mughal Empire believed it was the center of the world. It is gone. The British Raj, at its zenith, seemed unshakable. It is gone. What remains? The land remains. The river Ganges still flows from the ice caves of the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal, indifferent to the flags that fly over it. The monsoon still arrives in June to wash the earth clean. The mango trees still bloom. And stories remain. Good night.